All right, here we go. If you've been online lately, you know there's a lot of talk about Bimmy. Bimmy, for those who might not know, is a street legend from Queens who is also the uncle of Waka Flocka, the younger brother of Aunt Deb. Aunt Deb is the former manager of not only her son Waka Flocka, but also Nicki Minaj, Poochie Man, and a host of other people. Now, Bimmy is from Queens, former member of the Supreme Team, former lieutenant and all that. And, he's from Queens, and, a lot of people are accusing him of being a confidential informant, And this allegation has been, circling around for quite some time. Gerald Prince Miller, who was also a member of the Supreme Team, and his uncle, Kenneth Supreme McGriff, the former leader of the Supreme Team, both recently put out a documentary accusing Bimmy of being a confidential informant for over 40 years. Now, I have Duffle Bag Tony on the line, because Duffle Bag Tony is from the same neighborhood as these guys, Duffle Bag Tony, is born and raised in, Southside Jamaica, Queens, Baisley Projects, where the former Supreme Team, operated in the 80s and 90s. So we gonna have Duffle Bag Tony chime in. So, Duffle Bag Tony, what's going on, man?
Yo, Smitty, what's poppin'? What's going on with you? How you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Yeah, man, so we here to, get your take and, what you think, what's going on with Bimmy and, all these rumors about him being a confidential informant.
Oh, man, it's crazy, I grew up, as a little kid, seeing, Bimmy and the Supreme Team, running around doing their thing in my projects. My father, knew them, cause my father was heavy in the streets and, I just think it's crazy, that after all these years, the Supreme now, comes out and says that Bimmy was a CI for 40 years. So I have mixed emotions about it, man, On one hand, I want to believe it because, Supreme's been a pretty much stand-up guy, But then on the other hand, Bimmy's been a good dude, man, and, like I said, his rumor's been going around, far as me hearing it, probably, since the last 3 years, 2-3 years, but only one person came up to me and asked me was Bimmy was a CI, because I remember back in the day, I don't know if y'all remember, nigga Gravy. And that Gravy was a rapper from New York who later on went on to play Biggie in the Biggie movie. And his former manager, Big Fendi, they had like the streets on Smash back in like 2005, 2004, 2005, 2006. So I started, basically doing online promotion. This is back when MySpace was popping. I remember Fendi asked me back in like 05, he said, yo, I heard Bimmy was snitching, is it true? And I said, no, I never heard that. And that's the first time I heard that. Back in like 05, and then fast forward years later, to hear all these rumors now, man, I don't know, man. It's like they say, where's smoke is fire, and I don't know, man. I'm conflicted, I don't know.
Well, I don't know, man. A lot of people are saying that he's been telling for over 40 years, and, they put out this documentary, and, and like Bimmy said, there's no paperwork, but then, Gerald Prince Miller goes on to do an interview saying that, there's a difference between rats, and confidential informants, and the confidential informants is hard to get paperwork on, and so, a lot of people are confused, and a lot of people are, thinking it's a money grab. I know Bimmy said he thinks this a money grab. What do you think?
It could be a money grab, because from what I'm hearing, Supreme has, used up all his appeals. Like, I don't think he can appeal the case no more. And, said that it's a money grab, that they want money because, I think Supreme's mad at him because he ain't sent him some money. Me personally, when it boils down to it, something ain't like, somebody's lying, somebody's telling the truth. So you got Prince and Supreme on one end saying that he's an informant, and then you got Bimmy saying that he ain't, and there's no paperwork. And, when Prince did his interview, because I know Prince kept saying, I'm gonna expose that. I haven't seen any paperwork yet, so maybe it's coming. I don't know, but as of right now, there's no paperwork, but something's definitely fishy about the whole situation. But yeah, Bimmy, what I could at least say for Bimmy as a kid growing up, Bimmy was a good dude, man. He used to, give us money, to buy ice cream, He used to buy, a lot of niggas in the hood sneakers. Bimmy was a good nigga for the most part. So, if it does come out to be true that, Bimmy is a CI, it's definitely gonna hurt my feelings personally because Bimmy definitely was one of them ones. He was definitely one of them guys, man.
Oh man, so you saying Bimmy was the real deal? Like he was really in the streets back in the day?
Yeah, Bimmy was definitely one of them niggas, man. Like he's one of the first hustling niggas I seen growing up, coming through the projects. With LL Cool J. Like he brought LL Cool J to the projects. He running around with like I'll Be Sure when I'll Be Sure was popping. He's on the stage, with Run DMC, when Run DMC was popping at the time. Like I'm a little kid seeing this, And yeah, he was definitely that dude, And then later on, when he got locked up and came out of jail, he started working for Def Jam and running with LL more and working with other artists. Like, yeah, Bimmy's like one of the first I seen to merge the streets with the industry. So yeah, he was definitely one of them ones, man.
Okay, cool. So at the end of the day, like, what is your take on it? Like, like I know you say you conflicted, but like, where do you stand as of right now? You know what I mean?
As of right now, I'm just, watching it like everybody else, man, and it's just sad to see former friends, former brothers go at it, to see, Bimmy, at odds, with his former comrades, man, and, especially being from basic projects where all this shit went down at, it's kind of heartbreaking, man, but at the same time, like I said, I'm fighting my own, battles, man. I'm trying to get up out this motherfucker myself, I'm locked down, been locked down for the last, couple of years, and, I got a baby on the way, I'm trying to get up out of here, but other than that, man, as of right now, man, as far as I know, Bimmy's a good nigga. He's a good nigga, but no, because a lot of times, man, you could be accused of something, and even when you prove yourself, not to be that, people gonna believe, So, like I said, man, Bimmy gonna have a tough fight ahead of him, man, to prove that he's not that. But as far as I know, the Bimmy I know is a good nigga, man. He's a good nigga. But like I said, man, I'm on the sideline just watching.
All right. So that being said, I don't want to hold you too much longer. Tony. As always, man. Like I always tell you, man, hold your head in there, man. We definitely, praying for you. And we wishing the best for you. Hopefully you do come home soon, man. Cause the streets need you, man. You definitely one of them ones, man. And I salute you, my brother. I got a lot of love for you, man. So if you want, give your shout outs and we're gonna get up out of here.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Smitty. I love you, man. You're my nigga. But yeah, man, just shout out to everybody. Definitely, shout out to, white boy Smitty. Salute. Definitely shout out, to my baby Unique. Unique the freak. I love you, baby. Definitely gonna come home soon. Shout out to, the whole crew. Southside Jamaica, Queens, Baisley Projects, where I'm from, born and raised. Salute. And, to all y'all, man. I love y'all. I miss y'all. My second home, shout out to Dallas, shout out to my nigga Platinum, my nigga Flame Fearless, Farrago the boss. Nah, man, just everybody, man. You know what I mean? I love y'all, miss y'all, man. Everybody that's been showing support, man. Also make sure y'all tune in, to the Duffle Bag Tony story season 5. You know what I mean? Which, starts now, you know what I mean? So tune in, to all seasons. Duffle Bag didn't know the Duffle Bag Tony story. Season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4, and now season 5, you know what I mean? And many more to come, you know what I mean? I got a book coming out, you know what I mean? Got the documentary coming out, you know what I mean? And, we've been in negotiations, turning my stories into a series or a movie, so it's gonna be epic, man, you know what I mean? But it's the one and only Duffle Bag Tony, you know what I mean? I'm out.